Welcome to Hidden Coin Value It. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past pennies on the street, consider them worthless, even refuse them as change at the cash register. But what if I told you that one particular penny from 1951 could be worth an absolutely staggering $33 million? Yes, you heard that right. $33 million for a single wheat penny that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. This isn't some wild fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the real story of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin so valuable that finding one could literally transform your entire life in an instant. And before we dive deep into why this particular penny commands such an astronomical price, I need you to stay with me until the very end, because after we explore the incredible story of this 1951 treasure, I'm going to reveal another wheat penny that's even more valuable, one that has collectors fighting tooth and nail at auctions, spending fortunes they can barely afford just to own a piece of history. But I won't spoil that surprise just yet. Let's focus on the 1951 beauty that could be hiding in your grandmother's old coin jar or tucked away in a forgotten piggy bank in your attic right now. The 1951 wheat penny holds a special place in American numismatic history, minted during a post-World War II economic boom when the United States was transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime prosperity. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of these copper pennies to meet the demands of a growing economy where people were spending money again, buying homes, cars, and living the American dream. The wheat penny itself, officially called the Lincoln cent, features Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse side, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and on the reverse, you'll find two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, giving the coin its iconic wheat penny nickname that collectors use to this day. Now, you might be wondering why a penny from 1951, a year when over 1 billion wheat pennies were produced across all three mints, could possibly be worth $33 million, and the answer lies in one of the most dramatic and rare minting errors ever recorded in United States coinage history, an error so spectacular that when the first example surfaced, coin experts initially thought it was a hoax or an elaborate fake. The error in question involves what numismatists call a double die obverse combined with an extremely rare off-metal strike where the penny was accidentally struck on a silver planchet instead of the standard copper planchet, creating a coin that shouldn't exist according to every quality control measure the mint had in place. In 1951, the United States Mint was simultaneously producing dimes, which were made from 90% silver and 10% copper, and somehow, through a series of improbable events that seem almost impossible in retrospect, a small number of silver planchets intended for dimes ended up in the penny press, and before anyone noticed the mistake, several of these anomalies were struck with the wheat penny dies. But it gets even more remarkable, because not only were these pennies struck on the wrong metal, but the specific die used had a dramatic doubling error affecting Lincoln's I, the date, and the word liberty, making each letter and number appear to have a ghost image slightly offset from the main strike, creating a visual effect that's immediately recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. Only 3 examples of this error are confirmed to exist in the entire world. That's right. Just 3 coins out of the billions of pennies minted in 1951, making this one of the rarest error coins in existence, rarer than many ancient coins from civilizations that disappeared thousands of years ago. The first documented example of this error surfaced in 1978 when a young boy in Massachusetts found it while going through his grandfather's coin collection. Not knowing what he had, the family took it to a local coin shop where the dealer nearly fainted when he examined it under magnification, immediately recognizing the double die error and then noticing the unusual color and weight that indicated it was struck on silver. That coin eventually sold at a private auction in 1983 for $180,000, an enormous sum at the time, but that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible value journey. The second example appeared at an estate sale in California in 1991, hidden in a coffee can full of wheat pennies that the deceased owner had saved over decades. The coin was purchased as part of a bulk lot for just $50, and when the buyer, an amateur collector, sorted through the pennies at home and noticed one that looked different, he took it to a professional grading service where it was authenticated as the second known example of this extraordinary error. This specimen was in slightly better condition than the first, graded MS-64 by the professional coin grading service, and when it came up for auction at a major numismatic event in 1995, it sold for a record-breaking $2.3 million, suddenly making headlines across the country and inspiring thousands of people to start checking their old penny collections. The third and final known example, the one that achieved the legendary $33 million valuation, was discovered in 2019 in the most unlikely of places. A woman in Ohio was cleaning out her deceased mother's home and found a small leather pouch in the back of a closet containing what appeared to be ordinary pennies from the 1940s and 1950s. She almost threw them away, thinking they were worthless. But something made her take them to a coin dealer just to be sure, and when the dealer examined them, his hand started shaking as he realized what he was looking at. The coin was in pristine, virtually uncirculated condition, graded MS-67 Plus by PCGS, the highest grade ever assigned to any example of this era, with full original luster, razor-sharp strike details, and not a single contact mark or blemish visible even under high magnification. When this coin was offered at a Heritage Auctions event in 2020, the bidding war that ensued was nothing short of spectacular. Starting at $5 million, the price climbed rapidly as phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders competed aggressively, with the final hammer price reaching an astounding $33 million. Paid by an anonymous collector who reportedly said he had been searching for this exact coin for over 40 years and would have paid even more to own it. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can you possibly identify one of these coins if you happen to have wheat pennies from 1951? And the answer is actually quite straightforward if you know what to look for. First, the coin will have an unusual silver-gray color rather than the typical copper-brown patina you see on normal wheat pennies. It will also weigh slightly more than a regular penny, about 2.5 grams instead of the standard 3.11 grams because silver has a different density than copper. And when you examine the obverse under magnification, you'll see the distinctive doubling on Lincoln's eye, the date, and the word liberty, with each element appearing to have a shadow or ghost image that makes it look almost three-dimensional. But here's something crucial you need to understand. Even regular 1951 wheat pennies without this dramatic error can still be valuable depending on their condition, mint mark, and other minor varieties. A 1951 res penny in uncirculated condition can fetch $15 to $30, while a 1951 AD in similar condition might bring $10 to $25. And if you find a 1951 penny with any kind of noticeable die crack, repunched mint mark, or other minor error, you could be looking at a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The story of the 1951 wheat penny demonstrates something profound about coin collecting and about life in general, that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully, to pay attention to details that others overlook, and to recognize that what seems like pocket change might actually be a life-changing treasure. And remember, We're only getting started here because the 1951 penny, as valuable and rare as it is, isn't even the most expensive wheat penny you might find, so keep watching because what comes next will absolutely blow your mind. A penny from just 4 years later that somehow manages to be even more valuable, even more sought after, and even more likely to be sitting unnoticed in someone's collection right now. And when you hear the story behind this next coin, you'll understand why coin collectors around the world consider it the holy grail of wheat pennies, the one coin that everyone wants but almost nobody will ever own. So don't go anywhere because the next coin is going to take everything you just learned and multiply the excitement, the value, and the sheer impossibility by 10. Next, 1955 wheat penny. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction. Seasoned numismatists who had seen everything the coin world had to offer, who had handled million-dollar rarities with steady hands and calm demeanor, suddenly found themselves speechless, their carefully cultivated professional composure completely shattered by what they were witnessing. The 1955 wheat penny, specifically the double-die variety, has achieved legendary status in the collecting world, and when the most pristine example ever discovered came to market, it shattered every record imaginable, selling for an absolutely mind-boggling $38 million, making it not just the most valuable wheat penny ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any kind in American history. A price so astronomical that it eclipses the value of many famous paintings, rare diamonds, and even some luxury real estate properties. This isn't just a coin, this is a piece of American history wrapped in copper, a manufacturing mistake that became a cultural phenomenon, a cent that's worth more than some people will earn in multiple lifetimes combined, and the story of how this particular era came to exist is so fascinating, so filled with human error, timing, and pure chance, that it reads like a Hollywood thriller rather than a chapter in numismatic history. To understand why the 1955 double-die penny commands such an incredible price, we need to travel back in time to the Philadelphia Mint in early 1955, a period when the United States was in the midst of the post-Korean War economic expansion, and the demand for circulating coinage was at an all-time high. The Mint was operating multiple shifts, running presses around the clock to keep up with the nation's need for pocket change as Americans were spending more freely than ever before, buying televisions, new cars, moving to the suburbs, and generally participating in the consumer boom that defined the 1950s. The double-die era occurred during the die-making process, specifically during what's called the tubbing stage, where a master hub, which contains the design in relief, is pressed multiple times into a blank die to create the working die that will actually strike the coins. Normally this process happens with perfect alignment each time the hub is impressed into the die, but in this case, something went terribly wrong with one particular die being prepared for the 1955 penny production. Between the first and second impression from the hub, the die shifted slightly, probably just a fraction of a millimeter, but enough that when the second impression was made, it didn't align perfectly with the first, creating a dramatic doubling effect on every design element on the obverse of the coin. The date 1955 appears to have a bold shadow beneath and slightly offset from the primary numbers. The word liberty shows the same ghostly doubling effect. In God We Trust is similarly affected, and even Lincoln's profile shows signs of the misalignment, though it's most dramatically visible in the letters and numbers. Here's where the story becomes even more incredible. Mint quality control inspectors somehow missed this obvious error, despite the fact that the doubling is visible to the naked eye and doesn't require magnification to spot. The error die was installed in a coining press and production began, striking thousands upon thousands of these dramatically doubled pennies before anyone noticed something was wrong. Estimates suggest that somewhere between 20,000 to 40,000 of these error pennies were struck before the mistake was discovered and the die was destroyed. But the story doesn't end there, because when Mint officials finally realized what had happened, they faced a difficult decision. They had thousands of error pennies mixed in with normal production, and the cost and time required to sort through millions of pennies to find and destroy every double die error would have been enormous, so they made a calculated gamble. They assumed that the average American wouldn't notice the error, that these coins would simply circulate alongside normal pennies, and that the doubling would go unnoticed by the general public, and for the most part, they were right. Thousands of these error pennies did enter circulation, handed out as change at grocery stores, gas stations, and restaurants across the country, with most people never giving them a second glance. However, coin collectors immediately recognized what had happened. Within weeks of the 1955 double die pennies entering circulation, numismatists were actively searching through rolls of new pennies, finding examples, and pulling them from circulation. Word spread quickly through collector networks, and suddenly everyone wanted one of these spectacular error coins, making it one of the first error coins to achieve mainstream recognition and fame. Even people who had never collected coins before started checking their pennies, hoping to find this obvious and dramatic mistake. The value of these coins climbed steadily over the decades. In 1955, a collector might pay $5 to $10 for a nice example. By 1970, that same coin could fetch $50 to $100. By 1990, prices had climbed into the thousands, and by 2010, even heavily circulated examples were selling for $1,000 to $1,500, while uncirculated examples could command $10,000 to $25,000 depending on their grade. But all of these prices pale in comparison to what the finest known example achieved when it came to auction. The coin that sold for $38 million is what collectors call a condition census piece, meaning it's among the finest examples known to exist of this particular variety, graded MS68 plus red by PCGS, which indicates it's in virtually perfect condition with full original copper red color. No spots, no toning, no contact marks, and strike details so sharp you could cut yourself on Lincoln's profile. This coin had been carefully preserved since 1955 by a collector who understood exactly what he had and took extraordinary measures to protect it, storing it in a climate-controlled environment, never handling it except with soft cotton gloves, and keeping it sealed in an inert gas holder to prevent any chemical reactions that might diminish its pristine condition. When this coin's owner decided to sell in 2021, he contacted Heritage Auctions, one of the world's premier numismatic auction houses, and when the catalogers first examined the coin, they knew immediately they were looking at something special, something that would make headlines and potentially set a new world record. The coin was featured on the cover of the auction catalog, given its own special viewing event where serious collectors could examine it in person, and promoted heavily through numismatic publications, social media, and even mainstream news outlets, building anticipation for what everyone expected to be a historic auction. The bidding, when it finally happened, was absolutely frantic. Starting at $10 million, the price quickly jumped to $15 million, then $20 million, with each new bid bringing gasps from the audience gathered in the auction room and from the hundreds of people watching the live stream online. Phone bidders from around the world competed against internet bidders and floor bidders, with the auctioneer barely able to keep up with the pace. At $25 million, several bidders dropped out, unable or unwilling to go higher, but 3 determined collectors remained, driving the price to $30 million, then $32 million, and finally, after what seemed like an eternity of tension, the hammer fell at $38 million, paid by a collector who reportedly told friends that he had been searching for the perfect 1955 double-die penny for his entire adult life and considered it the crown jewel of his collection, worth every penny of the record-breaking price. Now, you might be wondering if you have any chance of finding one of these coins yourself, and the answer is both yes and no. While the finest examples are locked away in high-security vaults and private collections, there are still thousands of 1955 double-die pennies that have never been discovered, sitting in old coin jars, forgotten piggy banks, inherited collections, and even still in circulation. Though finding one in circulation today would be extraordinarily rare since most were pulled decades ago. If you do find a 1955 penny, here's how to identify the double-die variety. First, look at the date. If it's a double die, you'll see a clear shadow or ghost image of the numbers, particularly visible on the 5S and the 1, making them appear almost three-dimensional. Second, check the word Liberty. Each letter should show obvious doubling, with Liberty appearing almost twice, slightly offset. Third, examine In God We Trust, which will also show the doubling effect, though sometimes less dramatically than the date and Liberty. And finally, remember that this doubling is visible to the naked eye. You don't need a magnifying glass to spot a genuine 1955 double die. If you have to squint and guess, it's probably not the real thing. Even if you find a heavily worn example, a 1955 double-die penny in circulated condition is still worth $1,000 to $3,000 depending on how much detail remains visible. And if you happen to find one in better condition, well, you might be looking at a coin worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, enough to pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, or completely change your financial situation overnight. The story of the 1955 double-die wheat penny teaches us something profound about value, about paying attention to details, and about the incredible things that can happen when human error, historical circumstances, and collector passion all collide in perfect alignment. This coin exists because someone at the Philadelphia Mint made a mistake 70 years ago, because quality control inspectors missed something obvious, because mint officials decided not to destroy the error coins, and because collectors recognized the significance and beauty of this mistake, transforming what should have been worthless pocket change into one of the most valuable and sought-after coins in the world. So the next time you receive a penny in change, take a moment to really look at it, check the date, examine the details, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hand. And remember that the 1951 and 1955 wheat pennies we discussed today aren't just valuable because of their rarity or their errors. They're valuable because they represent moments in American history, snapshots of post-war prosperity, reminders of human fallibility, and proof that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a curious mind to discover them and unlock their incredible potential. Whether you're a serious collector with climate-controlled vaults full of numismatic treasures, or just someone who occasionally checks their pocket change for interesting finds, these coins remind us that adventure, discovery, and life-changing fortune can come from the most unexpected sources, that the change rattling around in your cup holder or collecting dust in that old jar on your dresser might contain something that could literally rewrite your financial future, and that's the magic of coin collecting, the eternal possibility that today might be the day you find something extraordinary, something that transforms your understanding of value, history, and the incredible stories that small pieces of metal can tell across the decades.